HTML is one of the most widely used languages on web to develop web pages. Now, it helps you delve into the world of web development and also improve your skills. So, if you are planning to start your career in web development or HTML and you wish to know the skills related to it, now is the right time to dive in. Hi everyone, this is Shantini from Edureka, and today we will discuss the top 50 HTML interview questions. These questions will definitely help you get through your interviews. So without any further ado, let's get started. The first and the most common question is, what is HTML? Now, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So it is a language of the World Wide Web. It is also a standard text formatting language which is used to create and display pages on the web. HTML makes the text more interactive and dynamic. It can also turn text into images, tables, links. So the HTML pages are saved by adding the .html or .html in web page name. So this scripting language is the most basic thing that you must know about before starting your career in web development. Now moving on to the next question. What is the difference between HTML elements and tags? Now, people often get confused between these two things that we use commonly in HTML. So, the HTML element is an individual component of the HTML web page or the document. So, for example, the title element represents the title of the document. On the other hand, we have the tags. Now, this is the root of the HTML document, which is used to specify that the document is HTML. For example, the head tag is used to contain all the head element in the HTML file. So, I hope now you're clear about how these two things are very different from each other. Now, moving on to the next question, what are the attributes and how do you use them? So each tag has certain additional attributes that change the way the tag behaves or is displayed. For example, you might have an input tag that has a type attribute, which you can use to specify whether it will be a text field or a checkbox, radio button, or one of many such options. Now, attributes are specified directly after the name of the tag inside the two angled brackets. They should only ever appear in opening tags or in self-closing tags, but they can never be in the closing tags. So here is an example where you see that we have used the input type. So we have three different types here. First, we have the text field. So for that, our input type is text. Then we have a checkbox for which the input type is checkbox. And finally, we have a radio button for which the input type is radio and the value is on. So this is how you can have different attributes for your input type. Now the next question is, what is the difference between a block level element and an inline element? Now a block level element is actually drawn as a block that stretches to fill the full width available to it. That is the width of its container and will always start on a new line. So with the help of this block, you will have a full width. That is, if you are viewing a web page, it will show you the entire web page with the full width of it. So here the elements that are block level by default are the div tags, the image tag, section, form, and the navigation tag. Now talking about the inline element, these elements are drawn where they are defined and only take up space that is absolutely needed. So the easiest way to understand how they work is to look at how the text flows on a particular page. Now the example of elements that are inline by default include the span tag, bold, strong, then the anchor tag and also the input tag. So this was the main difference between a block level element and also an inline element. Now moving on, when are comments used in HTML? Now to understand your code easily, you can always add code comments to your HTML document. Now these are actually not displayed in your browser, but they just help you in leaving notes for yourself and as well as other developers as to what a section of HTML is for. So suppose you want to explain a code to someone, you can just write the comments beside that particular line of code and the other person can understand that easily. So the start of the comment is denoted by the less than and exclamatory hyphen, and the end is marked by hyphen, the greater than symbol. Now anything in the middle will be completely ignored even if it contains valid HTML. So here is an example. You can see that this is the way how we can write comments in our HTML code. So we have the beginning with the less than symbol, then we have an exclamatory sign and then hyphen, and inside this whatever you write will be taken as a comment and it will not be considered even if it contains any sort of valid HTML code. Now moving on to the next question. What are the HTML tags used to display the data in the tabular form? So there are various tags that we can use while building our table in HTML. So let's have a look at the list of tags that we use to display data in the tabular form. So for that, first we have the table tag. So this is the main tag that will define your table. After that, we have the tr tag. Now this tag defines a particular row in a table. So in order to insert or define any row in your table, you need the tr tag. After that, we have the th tag. Now this tag defines a header cell in a table. So in a table, wherever you're writing the heading for any row or any sort of column, you have to use the th tag. Next, we have the td tag, and this is used to define a cell in a table. Now next up we have the caption. This is simple. It will just define the table caption for you or whatever you're naming your table to be. And then we have the column group, that is call group. Now this specifies a group of one or more columns in a table for formatting. And similarly we have another call tag. Now this is used with the call group element to specify column properties for each column. Next we have the tbody tag. Now this tag is used to group the body content in a table. And then we have the thead, which is used to group the header content in a table. And finally we have the tfooter tag. Now this tag is used to group the footer content in a table. So these are some of the most common tags that we use while creating a table in HTML or while inserting any elements inside a table. Now moving on to the next question, how to create a hyperlink in HTML. Now the HTML provides an anchor tag to create a hyperlink that links one page to another page. These tags can appear in the form of an unvisited link, visited link, or an active link. So you might have noticed whenever you go to any particular web page, there are certain sections of that particular website that might redirect you to a different website. So this is where the hyperlink comes in. So we have the unvisited link. Now this is displayed and underlined in blue, and the visited link is underlined in purple, whereas the active link is underlined in red. So here you can see the syntax of hyperlink in HTML. So we have our anchor tag, and inside that we have the href, inside which you are going to insert the particular link to the website that you are linking it to. And then you can write any link text for this as well. So this is how you can create a hyperlink in HTML. Now next up, name some common lists that are used when designing a page. Now there are many common lists used for designing a page. So you can choose any or a combination of the different list types. So here we have three different types of list. First is the ordered list, then unordered, and then finally the definition list. Now for the ordered list, this list displays elements in a numbered format. That is, it is represented by the OL tag. Now talking about the unordered list, this list displays the elements in a bulleted format, and it is represented by the UL tag. And finally for the definition list, it displays elements in a definition form like in a dictionary. So the DL, DT, and DD tags are used to define the description list. Now the next question is, what is semantic HTML? Now semantic HTML is basically a coding style. So it is the use of the HTML markup to reinforce the semantics or meaning of the content. So for example, We have the B tag, which is used for bold statement, and also the I tag, which is used for the italic statement. But in semantic HTML, what happens is instead of the B tag and the I tag, we use the strong tag and the EM tags. So with the help of the strong tag, we make any particular element as bold, and with the help of the EM tag, we make it italics. It is used in the same way where we have one opening strong tag and then we have another closing one, same with the opening EM and closing EM tag. Now next up, how to create a nested web page in HTML. So the HTML iframe tag is used to display a nested web page. Now in other words, it represents a web page within a web page. So the HTML iframe tag defines an inline frame. So you can see here is an example for creating a nested web page in HTML. So for that, we have the basic HTML and the body tag, and inside which we have an h2 tag where I have just written it to be HTML example. And now inside this, we have the iframe. Now what happens inside the iframe tag is we have a source code to another website. So here I have taken the example for the edureka.co website, and I have given the height and width, which will specify the size of the iframe. So what happens is this height and width attribute will specify the size of my iframe, and this will be nested inside my web page. So this is basically creating a web page inside another web page. So this is how the nested web page works in HTML. Now moving on to the next question, what is an image map? Now an image map is used for linking many different web pages with the help of a single image. Now this is represented by the map tag. So you can define shapes and images that you want to include as part of an image mapping. The next question is, does a hyperlink only apply to texts? The answer is no, because hyperlinks can also be used on texts and images. Now the HTML anchor tag defines a hyperlink that links one page to another page. And the href attribute is the most important attribute of the HTML anchor tag. So here you can see that there's a syntax for the hyperlinking. So we have the anchor tag and href, and inside this you can put up the link to which you are linking it to and then provide any particular link text. You can also link any particular image here. You just have to insert the source to the image or the file name for your image. Now next, what is a style sheet? So a style sheet is used to build a consistent, transportable, and well-designed style template. You can add these templates on several different web pages. It describes the look and formatting of a document written in the markup language. So when HTML came, it was the most basic web structure. So it provided you only the basic structure where you could just create the most basic web page. But style sheet helps you in adding different styles or different templates to your web page itself. You can add different formatting, and also you can change your texts, and different styles can be added as templates on several web pages. Now the next question is, explain the layout of HTML. Now this HTML layout specifies a way in which the web page is arranged. So every website has a specific layout to display the content in a particular manner. And now we have different HTML elements that are used to define the different parts of a web page. So let's have a look at the different elements. So first of all, we have the HTML tag, and then we have the head, then title, and then we have our body section. And finally, we have our h1 tags or the p tags. So for that, we have h1, h2, h3, and many more heading tags. And then we have the paragraph tags. Now talking about the head tag, it is used to define a header for a document or a section. We also have another navigator tag, and this defines a container for navigation links. Then we have section, which is used to define a section in a document. And then we have article, which is used to define an independent self-contained article. And then we also have another aside tag, which is used to define content aside from the original content. And finally, we have a footer, which is used to define a footer for a document or a section. Now next up, what is a marquee? Now, a marquee is used for scrolling text on a web page. It scrolls the image or text up, down, left or right automatically. So you should just put the text which you want to scroll within the marquee tag. So you just have to use this tag and insert your text inside this particular tag. And also specify if you want to scroll the image or the text in which direction, that is up, down, left or right. The next question is, what are the tags that are used to separate a section of texts? Now, for separating a section of text, we can use different tags. So for this, we mainly have three tags, that are the BR tag, the P tag, and the block quote tag. Now, firstly, we have the BR tag. Now, usually this tag is used to separate the line of text. So this breaks the current line and also conveys the flow to the next line. And then we have the P tag. Now this contains the text in the form of a new paragraph. And finally we have the block quote tag. Now this is used to define a large quoted section. So if you have a large quotation, then you just have to put the entire text within the block quote tag. So these were the three different tags that you can use in order to separate a particular section of texts. Now the next question is, what is the difference between the div tag and the span tag in HTML? Now the difference between the span and the div is that a span element is inline and usually used for a small chunk of HTML inside a line, such as inside any particular paragraph. Whereas the div or division element is the block line, which is equivalent to having a line break before and after it and used to group larger chunks of code. So here is an example where you have the division tag, where I have specified the element to be HTML, and inside that we have a span. So inside that span I have specified the class as webdev and the text is interview. So you can see that the span is an inline element, whereas the division tag is the block line element. Now moving on, what is the purpose of using alternative texts in images? So the purpose of using the alternative texts is to define what the image is about. Now during an image mapping, it can be confusing and difficult to understand what hotspots correspond to a particular link. So these alternative texts come in action here and put a description at each link, which makes it easy for users to understand the hotspot links easily. Also, in case your web page is not loading due to certain internet connection issues, you can just see the alternative text in the image and figure out what it is trying to show, or whether it is a relevant image or not. Now moving on, how to create a new HTML element. So you can create new elements for the document in different ways. So here's the first example where you just have to put the element inside the script tag, and here you have document.createElement, and inside that you just have to put your element inside the double quotes. This is the simplest method of creating your element. You can also use it in the HTML, where you just have to use the myElement tag, and inside that write your element or whatever text you want to insert and then close the myElement tag. It's very simple to create any particular new element in HTML. So you can use either of these two methods to insert a new element. Now next up, is the doctype HTML tag considered as a HTML tag? Now this is a confusing question because a lot of people think that this doctype HTML is actually an HTML tag. But the answer is no. The doctype HTML declaration is not actually an HTML tag. Now there are many types of HTMLs, such as the HTML 4.01 strict, 4.01 transitional, then we have the frame set, then we have XHTML 1.0 strict, transitional, frame set, etc. Now this doctype HTML is actually used in order to instruct the web browser about the HTML page. So this is not basically a tag for the HTML, it is just used for the instruction purpose. Now the next question is, why is a URL encoded in HTML? Now an URL is encoded to convert the non-ASCII characters into a format that can be used over the internet, because a URL is sent over the internet by using the ASCII character set only. So if a URL contains characters outside the ASCII set, the URL has to be converted, and the non-ASCII characters are replaced with a percent symbol followed by the hexadecimal digits. Now next up, what is the use of an iframe tag? So now this iframe is actually used to display a web page within a web page, and how we can use this iframe to create a nested web page in HTML. So this is also similar to that. So the syntax for iframe is we have the iframe tag, and then we have the source where we insert the particular URL that we want to insert into the web page. And next up, we have the example for our iframe. So here I've taken an example where you have the source code as any particular demo iframe.html. So you just have to specify the width and height of your iframe. That is the particular width and height that you are going to insert inside that web page. So this creates a frame of this particular dimension inside your original web page. Here is another example to target to a particular link. So I've taken the link for edureka.co inside my iframe source and also given it the name as iframe A. So this is how you target to a particular link. Now moving on to the next question, what are the entities in HTML? So the HTML character entities are used as a replacement for reserved characters in HTML. So you can also replace characters that are not present on your keyboard by the entities. Now these characters are replaced because some characters are reserved in HTML. So suppose by mistake you have used up certain elements which are actually the reserved characters in HTML, they will be automatically replaced, and the replacement values are actually called as the entities in HTML. Next up, can you create a multicolored text on a web page? The answer to this question is yes, you can create a multicolored text on a web page. Now, in order to create this multicolored text, all you have to do is use the font color tag. So what happens here is that you have the font tag, and inside that you specify the color that you want to use for your font. So you can specify any particular color that you want your font to be. Suppose you want your font to be in red color. Inside the font color tag, you can specify the color to be red. And in this way, you can provide different colors to the different texts present in the web page. Now, the next question is how to make a picture of a background image of a web page. Now, in order to make a picture, a background image on the web page, all you have to do is put the body background tag code after the head tag. So right after you have written your HTML code and you have closed your head tag, you have to specify the body background equal to and then provide the particular image that you want to set as the background image on your web page. So you just have to write body background equals to the name or the source of that particular image. Now this will replace your background into that particular image. Now moving on to the next question. What is the use of a span tag? So we have already seen in the previous question how we have used the span tag and also the difference between the div and the span tag. Now this span tag is actually used for adding color on the text or in order to add any background on text, also to highlight any color text. So here is an example on how you can use this particular span tag. So for that you have the span style, and you can specify the color. You can either put it in the hexadecimal value or the color you want to add here, and then you have the text and you close the span tag here. So with the help of this tag, you can add color to your texts or also add the background and highlight any of these and specify the color inside this particular span tag itself. So this is basically used for styling your elements or your texts inside the web page. Now moving on to the next question, what is the advantage of collapsing white space? So the white spaces are a blank sequence of space characters which is treated as a single space character in HTML. Now because the browser collapses multiple spaces into a single space, you can also indent lines of text without worrying about multiple spaces. Now this enables you to organize the HTML code into a much more readable format. Now next up, is there any particular way to keep the list elements straight in an HTML file? Now the answer to this is by using indents, you can always keep the list elements straight. So if you indent each sub-nested list in further than the parent list, you can easily determine the various lists and also the elements that it contains. So this is one way through which you can always keep your list elements straight in the HTML file. Now the next question is, explain the key differences between local storage and session storage objects. Now the key differences between the local storage and session storage objects are that the local storage object stores the data without any expiry date. That is, it can hold it for as long as you want it to. However, the session storage object stores the data for only one particular session. So if you log out of one session and get into the other, you wouldn't find that session storage object. Now, in the case of a local storage object, data will not delete when the browser window closes. However, the data gets deleted if the browser window closes in the case of session storage objects. And finally, the data in the session storage is accessible only in the current window of the browser. But in case of the local storage, the data can be shared between multiple windows of the browser. So these were some of the differences between the local and the session storage objects. Now moving on to the next question, when is it appropriate to use frames? Now frames can actually make navigating a site much simpler and easier. So if the main links to the site are located in a frame that appears at the top or along the edge of the browser, the content for those links can be displayed in the remainder of the browser window. So this makes your navigating quite simpler because you will have a different frame or it will be displayed in a remainder of the browser window so that you can easily view or see where you can navigate in order to reach the content of those links. The next question is how to insert a picture into a background image of a web page. Now, in order to insert this picture into the background image, you just have to use the body background tag that we have already discussed, where you can use the background which is used inside your body tag. So now this comes right after you have closed your head tag. So inside the body, you will specify your background and specify the image file or the source file for your image. And automatically your background image will be changed into the web page. The next question is what happens if you open the external CSS file in a browser? Now when you try to open the external CSS file in a browser, the browser cannot open the file because the file has a different extension. Now the only way to use an external CSS file is actually to reference it using the link tag within another HTML document. So what happens here is that you have to use the link tag and put it inside another HTML document from where you can link it to your actual CSS file in a browser. Now moving on, what is the hierarchy that is being followed when it comes to the style sheets? Now, if a single selector includes 3 different style definitions, the definition that is closest to the actual tag takes precedence. So suppose inline style takes priority over the embedded style sheets, which takes priority over the external style sheets. So you can say that inline styles definitely takes the priority here. And also one more thing to keep in mind is that the definition that will be the closest to the actual will take precedence any day. Now moving on to the next question, how do you create a text on a web page that allows you to send an email when clicked? Now to change the text into a clickable link to send an email, you need to use the mail to command. Now this command is used within the href tag. You can put it inside the href tag, that is the anchor tag href equals to, then use the mail to command and insert your mail address inside this and also add the text that is to be clicked. So what will happen here is you'll just create a link here. So as soon as you click this link, you will write a mail to the particular email address that you have inserted inside that particular link. Now this will allow you to send an email as soon as you click this particular link. Now the next question is, how are active links different from the normal links? So the default color for the normal and active link is blue, and some browsers recognize an active link when the mouse cursor is placed over that link, whereas others recognize the active links when the link has the focus. Those that do not have a mouse cursor over that link is considered to be just a normal link. So basically you can differentiate between the active and the normal links based on the color and also when you place the cursor over that particular link. Now moving on, the next question is, what are the different tags to separate sections of text? Now we already know about the BR tag, but this is just one way to separate the line of texts. There are other tags like the P tag and block quote tag that are used to separate sections of text. So with the BR tag, you can either break the line, and then with the P tag, you can go to the next paragraph. And with the help of the block quote, you can separate into different sections and put the larger section inside a block quote tag. Next up, are there instances where the text will appear outside of the browser? Now by default, the text is wrapped to appear within the browser window. However, if the text is part of a table cell with a defined width, the text could extend beyond the browser window. So in some cases, you might be noticing that if you're writing a table in your HTML code and when you go to the web page, you see that the table extends and goes out of your window. So for that, you have to specify the table width accordingly. And you have to make sure that your table does not go out of the browser. Now moving on, write an HTML table tag sequence that outputs the following. So here they have provided the output where it should look like 50 PCS 100 500 and 10 pieces 550. Now you just have to write one code that will give you this particular output. So this is nothing but creating a table where you will have these particular elements inside that. So you can write the code in the form of a table. So here we have the table, then we have the TR tag for the first row. And inside the first row, we will have three different elements. We have 50 pieces, then we have 100, and then we have 500. And then we will create the next row with another TR tag. And inside that, again, we will insert three different elements, that is 10 pieces, 5 and 50. So this is just one example. You might be asked such similar questions in your interviews where they will give you the output and ask you to write an HTML code. They might give you the output of a table and ask you to create an HTML code for that particular table. At that moment, you just have to remember the elements that you need to insert and create the structure for that particular table. Now the next question is, what is the advantage of grouping several checkboxes together? Now the checkboxes don't actually affect one another, but as soon as you group these checkboxes together, it helps to organize them. So checkbox buttons can have their name and do not need to belong to any particular group either. A single web page can have many different groups of checkboxes. In this way, it just helps you make your web page look a little more organized. Now moving on to the next question, what happens if there is no text between the tags? Does this affect the display of the HTML file? Now, if there is no text present between the tags, there is nothing to format actually. Therefore, no formatting will appear. So some tags, such as the tags without any closing tag, for example, if you have any image tag which do not contain the closing tag, you would not require any text between them. Because if there is no text, there would not be any formatting as well. Next question is, what are the limits of the text field size? Now here the default size for a text field is around 13 characters. However, if you include the size attribute, you can also set the size value to be as low as 1. The maximum size value will be determined by the browser width. Also, if the size attribute is set to 0, the size will be set to the default size of 13 characters. Now moving on to the next question, what is the relationship between the border and rule attributes? Now we have the default cell borders with a thickness of 1 pixel, and these are automatically added between your cells if the border attribute is set to a non-zero value. Similarly, if the border attribute is not included, a default 1 pixel border appears when the rules attribute is added to the table tag. The next question is, what is SVG? Now, the HTML SVG is actually used to describe the two-dimensional vector and vector or the raster graphics. Now, the SVG images and their behaviors are defined in XML text files. So what happens is, the XML files you can create and edit an SVG image with the help of the text editor. Now, this one is mostly used for vector type diagrams like pie charts or the two-dimensional graphs in any XY coordinate system. So here is an example that you can see how you can use the SVG in HTML. So you just have to specify the width and the height here, and also you can add the different elements that you want to add. So suppose you want to add a shape. Here I have the X and Y coordinates specified to the value as 50, 50 and the radius to be 40. Also, you can specify the width or the color that you want to fill the shape with. So this is how the SVG works in HTML. Now moving on to the next question. What is a button tag? Now the button tag is used in the HTML5. So what you can do is you can use it to create a clickable button within the HTML form on the web page. Not just that, it creates a submit or a reset button as well. And this button tag can be written as, you can specify the name first. So suppose here is an example where I have specified the button name to be button, and then you can also specify the type here, and finally you can write the text. Suppose you can just insert click here or submit or anything that you want to specify for your button. Now next up, list the media types and formats supported by HTML. So HTML supports a wide range of media formats for your sound, music, videos, movies, and also animations. Now some of the extensions supported by each of these media formats include the PNG, JPG, JPEG, and the GIF, and many more for your images. Also for your audio, you have the MIDI, the real audio, WMA, etc. And finally, for your video, you have the MPEG, AVI, QuickTime, Real Video, MP4, etc. Now moving on, what is the cell spacing and cell padding? Now cell spacing is referred to as the space or the gap between two cells of the same table, whereas your cell padding is referred to as the gap or the space between the content of the cell and cell wall or cell border. So you can see that you can specify the cell spacing in the following way, where you just have to put the border cell spacing and the value inside your table tag, and also you can specify the cell padding value in the similar way. Now moving on to the next question, what is the difference between HTML and XHTML? Now this is one most frequently asked question. So the differences between HTML and XHTML are, HTML is an application of the standard generalized markup language, whereas XML is an application of the extensible markup language. Now the first one is actually a static web page, whereas the later one is a dynamic web page. Not just that, HTML allows programmers to perform changes in the tags and use different attribute minimization. Whereas XHTML, when user need a new markup tag, then user can define it in this. And finally, HTML is all about displaying information, whereas XHTML is all about describing the particular information. So these were some of the differences between HTML and XHTML. Now moving on, how many types of CSS can be included in HTML? Now there are three different ways in order to include the CSS with the HTML. First we have the inline CSS. Now this is used for styling small contexts. To use inline styles, add the style attribute in the relevant tag. Next up we have the external style sheet. Now this is used when the style is applied to many different pages. Each page must link to the style sheet using the link tag. Now this link tag goes inside the head section. So here is an example on how you can use the external style sheet. So you have the link to your style sheet, and then you have the type as text or CSS, And finally, you have the href where you are linking your CSS file. So you have to just insert your CSS file here in order to link it to your HTML. And the final way is the internal style sheet. Now this is used when a single document has a unique style. So the internal style sheets needs to put in the head section of an HTML page by using the style tag. So here is an example where you have the style type, then you can add the different colors or the margin for your paragraphs and also add background images inside your body. And here you can specify the URL to your images as well. So this is another way of doing the internal style sheet and also linking your CSS to your HTML. So these were the three main ways how you can link your CSS to your HTML. Now moving on to the next question. What are the logical and physical tags in HTML? Now the logical tags are actually used to tell the meaning of the enclosed text. So the example of the logical tag is the strong tag. So as soon as we enclose the text in the strong tag, it tells the browser that enclosed tag is more important than the other texts. And talking about the physical tags, these are used to tell the browser how to display the text enclosed in the physical tag. So some of the examples include the B tag, which is used for making your element bold. Then we have the big tag and also the I tag. So these are the different examples for your physical tags. Now moving on to the last question, how can you apply JavaScript to a web page? Now in order to make your web page more interactive, you need JavaScript. It is a scripting language that also allows you to interact with certain elements on the page based on user input. As with CSS, there are three main ways to include JavaScript. So first we have the inline method. Now certain HTML elements allow you to execute a piece of JavaScript when a certain event occurs. Now for example, a button allows you to run a script when you click on it. These events are accessed through attributes and differ based on the events that are available on each element. Now here is an example that shows an alert with a message when the user clicks on it. So you have the button tag and on click you have the alert, click the button. Now this was just one way. Next up we have the script block method. So you can define a script block anywhere on the page, which will get executed as soon as the browser reaches that part of the document. Now this can be inside the head or the body section of your document. So this example shows how you can write the script block. So you just have to insert all your elements inside your script tag where you have specified certain variables, and also you can add the alert here itself. And finally, you have the link to a JavaScript file method. Now this allows you to keep the content of the page separate to how users interact with that content. Also, it allows you to load the same script on multiple pages. Now, as with the script block, you can also load a JavaScript file from the head or the body tag itself. So here you just have to insert your source code inside your script tag and you can link it to your JavaScript file. So with this, we have come to the end of our top 50 HTML interview questions. Now these are some of the most commonly asked questions, but you can also let us know about more questions if you have faced any such interviews in the recent times. So don't forget to let us know about your opinion or also more questions in the comment section below. And I hope these questions will definitely help you crack the interviews. So all the best. Until then, thank you and happy learning.